Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 58 of Duval Rundown. My name is Gus Logue. Today I'm joined by Hays Carlyon of The Frangie Show, which you can catch on 1010XL, 92.5 FM each weekday from 4 to 6 p.m. Hays is also, I would say, our lead writer at 1010XL. You can check out the blog that he did on Liam Coen's introductory press conference up on 1010XL.com/Jaguars. But Hays is here to talk to me about Liam Coen's introductory press conference yesterday. He was introduced as the 8th full-time head coach in franchise history, sitting next to owner Shad Khan. City Mayor Donna Deegan also spoke. So we're going to get into all of that. But Hays, thanks for joining. How you doing today?
Sure thing, Gus. Always good to be with you.
We're going to start out, as we always do, with a little bit of Jaguars trivia. Who popularized the Jaguars' Duval rally chant in the 90s? Was it left tackle Tony Baselli, team owner Wayne Weaver, local attorney Eddie Farah, or radio DJ Everett Eason? You know the answer to this one, Hays?
I actually don't. I'm going to say some interesting choices there. I'm going to go with D.
You are right. It is radio DJ Everett Eason, also known as Easy E, on 92.7 The Beat, which is now 93.3 The Beat in local Jacksonville radio. But yeah, he got it from the streets, quote unquote, and kind of popularized it around the city. And now, obviously, it's kind of
that's where I get my stuff too.
Yeah, from the radio, right?
The streets.
From the streets first, though, absolutely. But I just thought that was a good
mean
time.
Streets of Ponte Vedra.
Absolutely. Liam Coen yesterday broke out a pretty not good Duval chant, but I mean, it's to be expected because the chant is less of a team chant and more of a city cry. And obviously he has been a citizen of the city for only a couple of days now. But we're here to talk about Coach Liam Coen.
We'll get that right when he beats the Texans 38-10 in week 1.
We'll see. Hays, you were there in person for a limited just viewing of Liam Coen's presser. It was not a closed event, but it was invitation only to only media members who have consistently been with the team, reporting on the team. And so just to start out, what was like your first major takeaway from seeing Coen in person yesterday?
Well, it reaffirmed what I'd learned about him last week. You know, we've talked about Liam Coen. We did our top 5 a month ago. He wasn't in my top 5 because he was very inexperienced, and that was a concern for me. I think what I learned about him, though, last week was he's exactly what this organization needs. He is a competitive killer, and he illustrated that by beautifully orchestrating the coup on Balky, which had to be done. It saved the organization from years of future strife and incompetence. And so that showed me, because this is a guy that doesn't have a lot of leverage. He doesn't have a resume that's as strong as some of these other 10 that they interviewed. Might have the flimsiest, really, in terms of NFL experience. But what it showed me is, even though he didn't really have a lot of leverage, he still was able to dazzle them in the presentation and then basically throw down the gauntlet. He can say, and they can say whatever they want to say about this. Frankly, I don't know why he hides from it. It's made him a local hero. And I understand, you don't want to be necessarily that guy that can, get around the league and that can linger. But I don't think it's something he should be running from locally. I think everybody's excited that Liam Coen utilized a power play to get Balky out. And so that showed me a lot, because that showed me that, yes, he's young, but he's got that competitive killer mindset that you have to have. And that, frankly, I'm not sure this organization has had in a while. And so I was really excited about the moves Liam Coen made last week. And again, I think it's ridiculous for, I get Buccaneers fans. You're going to be upset. You lose a gifted coach. Right. But for Tampa Bay to handle it as an organization the way they handled it was ridiculous. Like Jason Licht wouldn't, do cartwheels to get a 300% salary bump if it was offered. Oh, and by the way, you can now be your own boss. I know he's his own boss in Tampa, basically. But my point is, who in their right mind wouldn't take triple the salary and and be able to run your own program. I mean, anyway, but that's getting us off track. But I liked how it's set up. And then yesterday, I think he hit all the right notes. And you're right, he did. He was very gracious with his time. He joined Frank on the Frangie show. He did scrums with local writers and local TV apart from the press conference. And one of the things that he said to the writers is, I want us to play through the echo of the whistle. You know, if we get a flag or two early on, okay, we'll pull back. But that's the mentality we have to have. And so I always worry about young offensive coaches. And this was a worry I had for my top choice, Ben Johnson, was, can they bring the edge here? Because we saw how lacking that was on the cheap shot on Trevor in the Houston game. And Doug Peterson's hugging D'Amico Ryans after the game and, blaming Jarian Jones for how he reacted. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Right. This is a gladiator sport. And Liam Coen, I thought yesterday, kind of reaffirmed what we've seen. This is somebody seeking that edge, seeking that extra advantage, and wanting to play in a violent way. And I thought his comments about the offensive line were really exciting as well. So obviously we can see the numbers. He is ahead of the league right now in terms of defensive coordinators. They may catch him, but he's clearly looking at Tampa's numbers ahead of where the league is now defensively. So you don't really have to worry about that. But it was great to see, beyond the schematics, this is a tough guy who's going to produce a tough football team.
Yeah, absolutely. Shad Khan was saying yesterday, he didn't give away a ton of information, especially as it relates to the searching process and how it all went down with the Buccaneers last week. But he was adamant in that the number one thing that he and the organization was looking for was someone to develop Trevor Lawrence, because Khan was citing how the league is all about quarterback development, but especially so when you already have a 25-year-old franchise guy, former number one overall pick, who's already on his second contract. You want to make sure you can maximize his talent. And so I think for Khan, once Cohen and Ben Johnson, who, as Mia O'Brien and multiple other people have reported, were kind of the clear top two candidates for the Jaguars. I think once both of the two kind of quarterback whispers went off of the board, that made Khan kind of rethink things. And then ultimately, I think Cohen was interested in the job mostly because of Trevor Lawrence, or largely because of Trevor Lawrence, but also he cited the wish to run the show himself. He said that he went back to the Rams in 2022, or so. He was originally hired into the NFL by the Rams. Then he went to Kentucky, and then he went back to the Rams, and then he left the Rams again. And the reason he left the Rams the first time was to be able to call plays as an offensive coordinator. And the reason he left the Rams the second time was that he was the offense coordinator, but because Sean McVay was there, he wasn't calling the plays and, in his words, running the show. And so he returned to Kentucky again to have that opportunity to call plays and to be truly the top of the offense. And so we saw what he did as the top of an NFL offense last year. And so that question, obviously there's a little bit of a question mark in terms of what step will Trevor Lawrence take next, just because it's in the future and we haven't seen it yet. But there is generally not really any questions about Liam Coen, the offensive orchestrator. It's really what you were talking about, making sure that he has the culture to set in place and to be able to communicate it effectively and efficiently. And based on yesterday's presser, I came away encouraged that that'll be the case, because I've talked about this on the show before, but Doug Peterson, I felt never had a consistent answer for what the identity of his football team was, or what the culture of the football team was. And he said that it kind of wins would make a football team and losses define a football team. And so again, it was never really a clear answer. And so I think it'll be important for Cohen. He said that it starts with communication. But I also really liked that he said in his opening statement that he's had experience under a lot of different head coaches, obviously, and the main thing he takes away from all of them is leadership. But then later on in the presser, he was asked a follow-up question about just what he's taken away from working under Sean McVay and Todd Bowles, and he said humility, which I thought was a great response, and my favorite response of the whole day. He said just the understanding that what you're not doing is good enough, and that you need to change, and that everyone can recognize that and appreciate that and go do it together. Because I think there was kind of a lack of accountability with the Jaguars, especially on the offensive side of the ball, but on all sides of the ball in recent years. But there was reports coming out from that 2022 season when the Jaguars went on that kind of miraculous second half of the season run and ended up beating the Chargers in that comeback playoff victory, where players said that even though the team was winning, it didn't feel like they were really winning in the right ways. It felt like they were like not losing rather than truly winning. And so like the players were saying that even though the wins were coming, it felt internally like they weren't truly clicking on all cylinders. And so I think for Cohen to already recognize that and to hopefully bring in the humility that everyone knows, yeah, even if this isn't a 4-13 team, as Cohen was saying yesterday, and even if this team is a lot more talented than last year's record would indicate, everyone needs to have some kind of accountability and humility in order to just take in what this new culture is and take it onto this next era of Jaguars football. So it'll be important to kind of check in on Cohen, I think, throughout not just his first year, but through the next couple of years to make sure that he's continuing to have a consistent message in terms of his culture and he knows what his identity is. But I thought it was a really good start on that end.
Without a doubt. Another thing Liam Coen said that I thought was really interesting because, personnel and who's going to be making the 53, who really is in charge of it, is very interesting. And Shad was asked about that and didn't really give a clear answer, but certainly made a comment basically to the effect of it's imperative that Liam is involved in every player coming in is someone he wants. The fact that Liam is here weeks before a general manager is going to be here in all likelihood, because it doesn't seem like they're in any, urgency to make that hire. They've got like 5 weeks and they'll make it before February 28th. But the fact that the head coach is here and the GM is not, and the GM isn't even, it seems like, close to being here. Mm-hmm. It seems like to me, it's Liam Coen in terms of personnel. And to me, that's exciting. I'll say this that also stood out. Liam Coen knows they've got 20 picks over the next 2 years. I guarantee you Doug Peterson had no clue. And I'm just saying, he just, that just did not excite him in terms of the personnel side of things. And again, I think that's where you get the disconnect of what is the identity. And that will not be the case here. Whoever the general manager is, obviously Liam Coen is going to have a huge say. If he's not making the hire, he's certainly going to have a huge say in who it is. And I think his voice is going to carry the day on all decisions. I think that's good. I mean, again, you want to have, if you believe in this guy this strongly, then you want to do everything you can to support him. And, and so I'm excited to see what Liam Coen can do from a personnel side of things. Another thing that I thought was really interesting is in terms of future moves, Liam Coen, in talking about Trevor Lawrence, said, Trevor is going to be a part of this process. That is something he has earned. Now, we can debate that, whether Trevor Lawrence has played well enough to be dictating who is here and who isn't. But this is why I think it's a good idea and why I think it shows the intelligence that Liam Coen has, because it tells you Christian Kirk is coming back. I mean, he and Trevor are best friends. So if Trevor Lawrence really is going to have a say in this, then he wants Christian Kirk back. And my guess is if you're Liam Coen, the franchise quarterback is going to look at it as a betrayal. And you just can't have that early on in your partnership. So I think yesterday was really good news for Christian Kirk, who does have a big cap number. Now they could restructure. I don't think Kirk will take a pay cut, but they could ask. But ultimately, even if it's at the number he's at, again, I think Liam showed yesterday that certainly building up the trenches is important to him. And so, again, I would love to see Tedero McMillan with the 5th pick, and then get your big guys in the second, third round. But again, I think what you're probably going to see, because I thought there was a chance Christian Kirk wouldn't be here. I think you're going to see the receiving core be BTJ and Kirk and Gabe Davis and Parker Washington, and obviously you'll still have Evan Ingram because I think he's coming back too. Bringing him back isn't as that's not as big of a commitment as Christian Kirk's.
Right.
So I mean, I think in looking at it, I think yesterday, bode really well for Trevor in terms of the input he's going to have. Really bode well for Christian Kirk, because I do not think they are going to cut Christian Kirk, knowing how Trevor Lawrence feels about him. And again, it goes beyond their friendship. I'm sure Trevor Lawrence believes Christian Kirk is still a very high-level player. He's just been hurt the last 2 years.
Right.
So I thought that was really interesting, because I do think now, having gone through, and they've got the whole process to play out, they still have to hire a GM. There's still the draft process. But it makes sense to me that as much as I might like another weapon in the room, it's probably going to be a big guy like a Mason Graham, maybe at 5. So you get a big-time defensive tackle to help you there. And that was something Liam Coen mentioned, that he likes the defensive guys. He talked about Josh and Trayvon, but said, I think his phrase was, we need to ensure the inside. So Mason Graham with Mason Smith obviously would be a pretty nice young combo. And then in the second round, you can get a guard. And one of those 2 picks in the third round, you can invest in the offensive line again. And who knows, maybe they'll do something in free agency as well there. But I got the sense that this will be a little bit like the Chargers approach that Jim Harbaugh had, where I don't think they'll send receivers away like they did, but I think they will fortify the lines. The Chargers went out and got Joe Alt to play right tackle, very high draft pick. I don't know that there's an offensive lineman like that. Maybe they'll find one, and maybe that'll be the selection. But I do think it was clear, and Liam Coen saying, look, when we break the huddle, the first thing the opponent sees is our offensive line. And that's got to mean something, and it will mean something. Well, I'm sorry, but Ezra Cleveland isn't going to fit into that. So, so I'm excited to see what, in terms of the lines of scrimmage, the moves that they now make as we get closer to the combine and the start of the new league year.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, where especially after seeing that Christian Kirk was there in person yesterday, I'll be surprised at this point if he was released. Obviously they can have further conversations, but it would be weird to see him there at the introductory press conference for the head coach and to be released a month or 2 later. And so, yeah, I think Kirk will still be there. Ingram, I'm still on the fence about, but I do think it makes sense to kind of like run it back for 1 more year in some regard. Like I think I wouldn't scoff at a Christian Kirk extension, but I think maybe just like see we've got. I wouldn't mind if they make a swing or 2 in free agency, but I think that they can kind of see what they have with this current roster and then really like kind of go for a championship starting next offseason based on what they learned that they have in Cohen and the staff's first year with kind of control or oversight of the roster. But I definitely agree more so that offensive line and the trenches in general seem to be his first priority. He had the quote about how the offensive line is the first thing that you see when the offense breaks the huddle. He spoke on the Frangie show about how the number one need, I don't think he was necessarily saying our number one need this offseason as a team is offensive line, but I think he was saying generally the number one need for an offense is offensive line. And so I think there's a lot of things that he said throughout the day in multiple different places that would suggest that they do want to bulk up the just pass protection and run blocking up front. And I think that'll go a long way towards helping Trevor Lawrence too, because I think that they would do well by trying to take some of the load off of his plate, but you can kind of do that in different ways. And so like I was talking a couple of shows ago about how Doug Peterson, Press Taylor try to do that by like having only 2 or 3 eligible receivers out in the route concept sometimes. And so they were kind of trying to help him out, but in the wrong ways, I feel like. But Liam Coen, by in having a really good screen game, by having a really good run game, he can do things to like not necessarily limit Trevor Lawrence, but still make the game easier for him. And I do think that that starts with investing in the offensive line up front. And so to continue with like the moving it forward conversation, what are your thoughts on the defensive coordinator search? Because they had Patrick Graham in for his second interview. And they've also got two other young guys who I'll try to look up their names in a second because I don't know.
Yeah, Aubrey Pleasant, I saw from the Rams, yeah, I mean, I think in looking at it, you know, Patrick Graham makes the most sense of the three that have been interviewed so far. He's just got more of a good experience doing it. He's done it at 3 different stops. Obviously, he's well versed in the Belichick system from his days in New England. So, yeah, a lot to like about Patrick Graham. They need somebody with that. That's one thing that I would say is, okay, you're from the McVay tree. Well, utilize the blueprint that Sean McVay has laid out in Los Angeles. His first year, he went and hired Wade Phillips to be the defensive coordinator, who at the time was one of the most respected defensive minds in the NFL. And I mean, I remember watching the Rams that first year, and when the Rams defense was on the field, McVay wasn't even watching. He was looking at his play sheet. He was talking to the offense because he had full belief that Wade Phillips knew what he was doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that's, you know, been in the league for 30 years, but I would hire somebody that, if I was Liam Coen, has been a coordinator before, hopefully for multiple years. Again, I think that was one of the real big downfalls of the Doug Peterson era. We get wrapped up in the play calling, and rightfully so, because Press Taylor was a problem, but he never was able to have the right coordinator here. I mean, Mike Caldwell was subpar for 2 years, and then Ryan Nielsen was a horror show. So, and both those guys were inexperienced. Caldwell was a first-time defensive coordinator, and Nielsen had only done it really for 1 year. So I would say for Liam Coen, like, he needs to go and be able to hand the keys over to somebody, which he acknowledged yesterday with the writers that he is going to do. He's like, I'll be involved, because you need that connection. But he's like, my vision is the defensive coordinator. It's their plan and it's their moral compass on the product out on the field. So of the 3 that we've heard of so far, Patrick Graham has the most experience. So that's who I would like it to be. I think he would do a nice job here. Yeah, I'm totally on board with you. I think that Patrick Graham should be the easy front runner. Aubrey Pleasant from the Rams, and then the other one was Durante Jones from the Vikings. They seem like 2 strong, up-and-coming young candidates, but I would certainly much rather have a guy that's been in the league for a couple of decades, hopefully, because I think that's important, especially for a team like this that has a young, first-time, 39-year-old head coach. But I think it's really important for any head coach to just have a defensive coordinator that they can kind of give the keys to the room to, and let them just draw on their experience to be able to build game plans against all of these demigod quarterbacks that we have in the league now. If you look at the recent defensive coordinators to coach in the Super Bowl over the last decade, roughly, a lot of that is that, like, Sean McVay with Wade Phillips pairing, Doug Peterson with Jim Schwartz, who had previously been an NFL head coach. I think over the past 8 years, the only defensive coordinators who coached in the Super Bowl who were not previously an NFL head coach or hadn't previously been in the NFL for 20 plus years were Robert Saleh with the 49ers and Jonathan Gannon with the Philadelphia Eagles. And other than that, it's like Wade Phillips, Bill Belichick, Steve Spagnuolo, Steve Wilkes, all of these older guys, Vic Fangio this year. And so I definitely think that Patrick Graham, certainly his individual profile, I'm very encouraged by. And I think that he is a similar philosophy that Cohen has in terms of players over plays. That was definitely one of my takeaways yesterday too. And it showed up. It's one thing for coaches to say that coach speak, but it's been evident in the tape for both Cohen's offenses and Graham's defenses. And so Pat Graham, being a guy who won a Super Bowl with the New England Patriots in the late 2000s and has been a defensive coordinator at several different stops over the past decade or so, I think he's definitely the right man for the job. But it'll be interesting to see where we go from here, because Cohen has said that they're going to focus on filling out the defensive coordinator and the defensive staff before then shifting their focus back to the offense and filling out that staff. And then they're going to figure out
the general manager. So we'll definitely still have plenty of news, plenty of updates on this channel and at 1010XL. Hays, you got anything else before we get out of here?
I'll just close on this. I also thought it says a lot about Liam Coen that he kept Heath Farwell, because a lot of coaches in general, but certainly young coaches, there's that kind of insecurity of, well, everybody's got to go. I can't have any remaining members. We need a clean sweep across the coaching staff. And obviously everything here was broken. That's why I'm here. And I give Liam Coen credit for saying, you know what? I'm inheriting a pretty good special teams coordinator, and we've got 3 really exciting specialists. So why would I disrupt that? I think it speaks to, again, intelligence, confidence in himself, and what's best for the organization, because keeping Heath Farwell was a brilliant move, and one in which I think will really benefit the club moving forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you shouted that out. Retaining Heath is it was reported yesterday. I think the team has not yet officially made the move, but it's unofficially official. But that was definitely a home run hire or rehire by Liam Coen under Farwell. Jamal Agnew in 2022 made a Pro Bowl. Ross Matisic has made the Pro Bowl and an All-Pro team in consecutive years. And then Logan Cook made a Pro Bowl and All-Pro, I believe, this year. And then Cam Little set franchise rookie records for points scored as a place kicker, and then also field goals made. And so Heath definitely, you can see how good he is just based on the body of work and kind of the stats from individual players on special teams over the years since he was hired as one of Doug Peterson's original staff members. But yeah, great to hear that Heath is going to be on board. It'll be exciting to see who the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and general manager are all going to be. But for now, we know that Liam Coen is the 8th full-time head coach in Jaguars history. So that'll do it for this podcast. Thanks again to Hays so much for joining again. We'll hopefully look forward to having Hays on pretty regularly throughout the offseason. We'll be back on Thursday with Mia O'Brien at 9:04. So till then, thanks everyone for tuning in. Take care.